60 million years ago, the world's heat and humidity unleashed a creature no modern ecosystem could survive. A snake longer than a school bus, weighing over a ton, with a squeeze more powerful than a crushing hydraulic press. Titanoboa didn't just dominate its world. It was created by conditions so extreme that its own size and lethality sealed its fate. Why would evolution drive an animal to become deadlier than its world could handle? And what fragile forces set the clock ticking on its downfall? The answer begins in a prehistoric rainforest, where the rules of life were rewritten. In the Paleocene, the planet's equator was locked in a heat wave that never broke. Mean annual temperatures in the ancient Colombian rainforest surged above 32 degrees Celsius, at least 5 degrees hotter than today's steamiest tropics. Humidity pressed in from every direction, saturating the lowland swamps and turning the air into a living greenhouse. Fossilized leaves, buried in thick seams of Sarajevo coal, record a world where plants grew with abandon, their stomata wide open to the flood of carbon dioxide. Isotope analyses from these ancient leaves and the bones of long extinct turtles confirm the same story. A climate that defied modern limits, with warmth and moisture that never relented. This was no ordinary rainforest. The Sarajevo Basin sprawled across what is now northern South America, a tangled labyrinth of rivers, lakes, and peat-rich wetlands. Coal beds tens of meters thick speak to a landscape where water pooled and organic matter piled up faster than it could decay. Paleontological records show an explosion of tropical angiosperms, ferns, and palms, evidence of a biome running on overdrive. Atmospheric CO2 hovered 50% higher than today, fueling a feedback loop of heat and growth. In these conditions, the rules that bind living reptiles simply dissolved. Cold-blooded animals, usually limited by their ability to absorb warmth from the environment, found no such ceiling here. With the sun's energy trapped close to the ground and nights offering little relief, the metabolic throttle was wide open. The Sarajevo rainforest became a crucible for evolutionary extremes, a place where size was no longer held in check by the chill of darkness or the scarcity of warmth. The world had become a furnace, and in that furnace, boundaries melted away. When paleontologists first measured the vertebrae pulled from the Sarajevo coal mine, the numbers defied belief. Each segment of Titanoboa's backbone was wider and thicker than anything seen in living snakes. Jonathan Block and Carlos Jaramillo, leading the excavation, confirmed the measurements again and again. No calculation error, no misidentified fossil. The largest individual stretched an estimated 12.8 to 14.3 meters from snout to tail, longer than a city bus. Their mass ranged from 730 to 1,135 kilograms, making even the heaviest modern anaconda, which rarely exceeds 250 kilograms, seem almost delicate by comparison. The vertebral columns revealed another secret. Titanoboa's spine carried as many as 186 vertebrae, each robust and pentagonal, built to support a muscular body nearly a meter thick at its widest point. This was not a one-off anomaly. Fossils from 8 separate, similarly sized adults show that such gigantism was the norm, not the exception, in Sarajevo's ancient swamps. Scaling laws drawn from modern void snakes, anacondas, and pythons helped researchers translate fossil dimensions into living mass. Every additional meter of length demanded exponentially more muscle and bone, amplifying the power of a constrictor that could envelop and overpower crocodile-sized prey. Yet, this scale was only possible because the world itself had changed the rules. In today's tropics, the green anaconda tops out at about 6.5 meters. For Titanoboa to reach twice that length and 4 times the mass, The Paleocene climate had to deliver relentless heat, pushing the metabolic ceiling far beyond anything modern reptiles experience. The magnitude of Titanoboa's size left the scientific community stunned. The numbers forced a rethinking of what warmth and abundance could produce in evolution's laboratory. But every extra kilogram came at a cost, setting up a delicate balance between power and vulnerability that would soon be tested by the world outside the rainforest. In the Sarajon swamps, Titanoboa ruled with methods refined by sheer size. Its hunting grounds were a labyrinth of slow-moving water and tangled roots, perfect for an ambush predator that could vanish beneath the surface. When movement rippled the shallows, whether it was a giant turtle like Carbonemys or a crocodilian such as Cerehonisuchus, the snake's advantage was absolute. Titanoboa's body, nearly a meter thick, could coil with a force modern anacondas can't approach. Scaling from living relatives, the pressure exerted by its muscles would have been enough to crush bone and suffocate prey several times heavier than a human. Fossils from the Sarajon mine reveal a food web dominated by giants. Carbonemys, with a shell almost as wide as a car tire, and Cerehonisuchus, a primitive crocodilian, both lived alongside Titanoboa. Yet neither matched the snake's raw power. Constriction wasn't just a method, it was an overwhelming show of force, a biological trap that left little chance for escape. Once caught, prey could do nothing but wait for the inevitable. But lethality at this scale came with a price. To maintain its bulk, Titanoboa needed a steady supply of large-bodied prey. Its metabolism, slow compared to mammals, allowed it to eat only 3 or 4 times a year. But each meal had to be enormous. Every successful hunt was a calculated risk. Too much time between kills, and the snake's reserves would dwindle. Too little prey, and even the mightiest constrictor would face starvation. Dominance in the Paleocene swamp depended on abundance of heat, of water, of food. For Titanoboa, each advantage was inseparable from a mounting vulnerability. The same traits that made it unstoppable in the hunt also locked it into a cycle of dependence on a world that could not remain unchanged forever. Around 58 million years ago, the world that had fueled Titanoboa's rise began to unravel. Global temperatures, which had hovered at extremes for millions of years, started a slow but relentless decline. Proxy records from deep sea cores and fossilized leaves show a cooling trend that crept across the equator, drawing down the heat that once powered the Sarajon rainforest. Wetlands that once stretched for hundreds of kilometers began to shrink, as rainfall patterns faltered and the swampy labyrinths dried at their edges. The thick coal beds of the Sarajon Formation, so abundant in the fossil record, thin out in younger layers, evidence of a landscape losing its grip on the waterlogged conditions that had sustained giants. For Titanoboa, this shift was catastrophic. Its massive body depended on warmth not just for growth, but for basic survival. As mean annual temperatures slipped below 28 degrees Celsius, the metabolic engine that once ran wide open began to sputter. Digestion slowed. Hunting became riskier. Fewer prey animals survived the changing climate, and the giants that did persist, giant turtles and crocodilians, became scarcer with each passing millennium. The Sarajon food web, once dominated by megafauna, fractured into smaller, more isolated populations. At the same time, new predators began to appear. Early mammals, smaller reptiles, and more adaptable snakes moved into the cooler, drier forests. Unlike Titanoboa, these newcomers thrived in uncertainty. Their smaller bodies required less food and less heat. They could wait out lean seasons and exploit new ecological niches as the old ones vanished. In this new world, efficiency replaced brute strength, and flexibility became the key to survival. With the close of the Paleocene, Titanoboa vanished from the fossil record. Its disappearance was not sudden, but the result of a slow tightening of environmental constraints. The very traits that had made it a ruler of its world, size, power, specialization, became liabilities as the climate shifted. In the end, the world that had created Titanoboa became a world it could no longer endure. Evolution rewards what works until the world changes. Titanoboa's dominance was absolute, but its fate was sealed by shifting climates. Today, as ecosystems destabilize and extremes emerge again, its story warns: survival isn't promised to the most powerful, but to those able to adapt. Nature never negotiates,